All right, 6 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. You know, one of the best gifts you can give a child is a book. Do you believe that? You agree with that, Robin?
I do. The fellow that I chose at the Angel Tree, he has a lot of books I got him for Christmas.
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Every year I'll give them books in addition to anything else they have on their list.
Our next guest has probably written books that children all over the world have read. She has quite a history. She's written more than 40 books for young readers. She is Deborah Hopkinson, and she's got a new one. It's called The Great Trouble, A Mystery of London, The Blue Death, and a Boy Called Eel. And according to my notes, we're also going to speak about the 200th anniversary of John Snow's birth, a pioneer in public health. His work mapped out the 1854 cholera outbreak in London, and his groundbreaking theory on the disease spread through water, not air, which was an important discovery. And so I'm not really sure how the two topics come together, but Deborah Hopkinson knows because she's on the phone. She's an historian. She's the recipient of the IRA Children's Book Award. She's the vice president of the advancement at Pacific Northwest College of Art. And again, her book is called The Great Trouble. And I don't know if she's out west or not. Deborah Hopkinson. Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning. Yes, I am. I'm in cold Portland, Oregon this morning.
Oh, very cold Portland, right? Now, so thank you for getting up early, first of all, because it's what, 10? It's like 7 o'clock where you are, right?
That's right.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for being on the air with us. Obviously, a long history of writing books for young readers, which I'm careful not to say children, but some of your books even go to the very young readers, correct?
I do, although I tend to write for sort of elementary school children and into teenagers. My last book was Titanic, Voices from the Disaster. And I had a lot of adults read it and didn't realize it was actually for maybe a 14-year-old.
Yeah, well, I think I'm among them. I've picked up my share of books that were really intended for children. I guess Harry Potter fits into that category, doesn't it?
Well, so much of what people are reading now, I mean, look at Catching Fire and Hunger Games. There's so much crossover. And I think that's a very positive trend. It's also a positive trend for, I think, parents to read along with their children. And a book like The Great Trouble is good for that because it has links both to history and understanding history, but also current events, because Haiti, you know, of course, has been hit by a cholera epidemic in our own time.
Yes. You know, I wondered about the historian part of what you are, simply because that would make for a great combination. If you're trying to look for a book for a child to read, that's not just going to tell a story, but also somehow inform them of some really true things that happened in this world. There's probably no better way to do that than through a story.
Well, you know, it takes a long time to develop a sense of history. I have a book about the Empire State Building, and I'll put a picture. It's called Skyboys. I'll put a picture up when I go on a school visit, and I do school visits all over the country. And I'll say, well, how old do you think this building is? And any guess is good, and some guesses are 10 years, and I've had a guess of 10,000 years. So you have to develop historical context because kids today, they're in a screen-based world. As soon as they see a black and white photo, they think, well, that's like, it doesn't have anything to do with me. That's past.
That's true. Wow, that's an interesting observation. And yet the children who are readers, there is two groups of children when it comes to reading, by the way. There are those who just never read, and then those who are reading all the time. I can remember when I was in school, and I guess it's still true. Remember that book club we used to belong to?
That's Weekly Reader. Club.
Yeah. So
they still have it.
Yeah, they do.
So there were some kids who would order like bags of books from that thing, and others who would just throw away the flyer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I think it's so important when I go to libraries and talk with family literacy nights for parents to read with their children. I mean, once your kid learns to read, you sort of think, okay, they're on their own. But if they don't see you reading, then it's a lot harder for them to develop those lifetime habits.
In the book, The Great Trouble, the one we're talking about today, you do talk about the spread of cholera, and it goes through a pump. Tell me about that.
So what happened in 1854, people did not know that cholera was caused by water. And Dr. John Snow, no relation to Game of Thrones, was an actual physician who had been developing theories that cholera was spread by water. And when this outbreak occurred in Soho, London in 1854, late summer, he began to map the neighborhood. And this is one of the first public health maps that was ever done. And he convinced the local officials to take the handle off the pump that was closest to where most of the deaths were. And you can see that map in my book, and you can also see it at UCLA. And if you go there today, you see a replica of the pump. And when they did that, the cholera epidemic began to wane. And later they found out that a house nearby, there was a baby that had cholera, and the mom was washing the diapers and putting them into the cesspool in the basement and was seeping below ground and into bricks, and the well itself was being contaminated. And, you know, that seems like a story from the past, but that's exactly what happened in Haiti. The sanitation at the Nepalese peacekeeping camps seeped into the river, and that's how 8,000 people have died. So this is a way to really tune kids into current events as well as learning how we got to where we are in science.
Wow, but that wasn't that was not planned by you, or was it? I mean, did you write the book after that, the Haiti situation?
No, I sort of knew about it in the course of writing it, but it really the whole Nepalese peacekeeping report came out this August by the Yale School of Law and Public Health. So no, I really didn't realize, you know, how prevalent it was today until after the book came out.
Wow. So now the children are now washing their hands and staying away from, right, unfiltered water or whatever.
Well, that's exactly what they're doing in Haiti. They have little phone videos to give information about how do you prevent cholera.
Oh, really? So you wrote the book without knowing that, but you wrote the book to teach about cholera in general, or about the way that it was handled, or... And obviously, there's a story, an important story in the book.
Well, my book is historical fiction, and I actually got inspired by a book called The Ghost Map by a nonfiction writer named Stephen Johnson, who's quite well known. He's getting his own PBS show next fall. And that's a really good, I think, way that people can approach it. If you're interested in nonfiction or history, you read The Ghost Map, the adult book, and have your kids read The Great Trouble. And I put a kid in the center of the action. So my main character, Eel, is a mudlark. Do you know what a mudlark is?
No.
A mudlark is someone who used to make their living in the Thames by collecting coal or pieces of rope and selling it. They were scavengers. And the Thames was kept quite clean for many years with these mudlarks, but then they invented flush toilets. And where do you think the toilets flushed into?
The wells?
The Thames River.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't until then later Sir Joseph Bazalgette developed London's sewer system that they were really free from some of these outbreaks of cholera.
Oh, you also made him an orphan. What significance is that?
Well, I have a very Dickensian... I love Dickens myself. I actually have a picture book called A Boy Called Dickens, which is about Dickens' early life. And so there's really a sort of a nod to Victorian literature and Dickensian novels. There's an evil stepfather, and there's some mystery. So I did that on purpose to really tie into that sort of Dickens flair.
This one is called The Great Trouble. When did this one come out?
It came out in September.
Okay, and does it automatically get into the school so that the children know about it? And are the children reading ebooks nowadays?
You know, I think some kids may be reading ebooks, but I go into many rural schools, and I feel, and I also feel personally, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but it's also, I think kids up to a certain age really love to have a book in hand.
Yeah.
The idea, Robin was saying about buying a book for kids at Christmas, there's also a way you can read with your children that way. You can sit and read a chapter or a page back and forth, and that really encourages fluency in reading. So, with the Common Core standards across the country, maybe not, where you are, but people are really looking at more nonfiction or fact-based. And so there's a lot of historical notes in the back of this book. So it's an adventure story with history.
Well, in fact, we had a teacher yesterday explaining to me, because I was not clear about the whole Common Core thing. So I guess I had a little bit of a grasp now because of our discussion with her. And it definitely sounds like what you've done here is you've given children a way to understand a real, true disease, in this case cholera, and then understanding more than just the facts about it, but rather the implications of it.
Well, to me, that's what's so fascinating about history, and that's why my books really are about, most of them are about history. So I had another book earlier this year called Knit Your Bit, which was about how people knit for soldiers in World War I. And I love to take these little events in history that we've forgotten about and then bring them to kids today.
And you also have an antagonist in the book. And he's
Yeah.
an interesting character.
Yes, fisheye Bill Tyler. Well, I got a chance to go to London to research the book, and I just walked the streets. And so I tried to imagine what it was like to walk, when they had those markets in Covent Garden and just someone sort of chasing you. And so, again, there's sort of a Dickens flair to that one.
Oh, wow. And so when you walk the street, I do the same thing sometimes if I'm in a place. I always wonder what it was like before, The book is called The Great Trouble. Do you continue the characters at all from another book with this one, or is this a standalone book?
Well, right now it is. I'm doing my next novel is going to be set in New York City around 1890. It's going to be called Alley Rat, and I'm also working on a book about Denmark in World War II, a nonfiction book for teens. But I have in mind that I might like to do a follow-up to this book, and it would be about the beginnings of the first humane society in London. It was called the Home for Lost and Starving Dogs. And so I have some ideas for some of the main characters to continue.
Do you learn yourself as you put a book like this together? Does the research educate you that you end up then putting into a story, or are these things you mostly knew already?
Oh, no. I do a tremendous amount of research, and many times for my Titanic book, I have bins of, books that I consult, and I send it out to people that are experts. So that's really the fun of it for me. I was one of those kids that always liked to read, like you said, and this is a way to keep reading and learning myself.
When the bottled water was sent over to Haiti because of the cholera epidemic and they had to have fresh water, if all of it wasn't used and the bottled water was returned to the United States or whatever country that supplied it, would there be a danger of the germs being on the outside of the bottle for cholera to be in our country or another country?
Well, my understanding of what actually happened, I'm not sure about the bottled water, was that the way that the Nepalese peacekeeping camp was set up was that it was going into the river. Most of the time you get it by ingesting the water. So that's how you ingest the bacteria. Mm-hmm. And it's called the Blue Death. Because the cholera bacteria causes you to really get dehydrated. You just basically, you eliminate all of your water. And so really one of the treatments for cholera is to rehydrate.
Oh.
So I asked kids, the cover of the book is this amazing collage of some of the images. And I asked kids what they think the Blue Death is. And many of them think it's death by drowning. But that really is because people would turn blue because of the dehydration. So I'm not sure about on the outside. Mostly it's really you would have to ingest it.
Oh, okay.
So the key to the story, if I'm understanding right, is the map that gives them an understanding that the disease is spread by water.
That's exactly right. And in my book, the kids actually helped make the map for Dr. John Snow. But one of the key points that they discovered was they interviewed everybody. So again, like a public health epidemic today where public health officials might try to figure out what was causing it, they went door to door and interviewed people to find out the people who died, where did they get their water. And one of the people they found out was a woman whose water was sent to her by her sons who lived on the street. And she lived 4 miles away in Hampstead. And the Broad Street pump water had a good reputation as being clean. But this woman, Susanna Ely, lived 4 miles away, and she died of cholera. And she was the only person in her neighborhood who died of cholera. And so Dr. John Snow was able to piece together. So that was the aberration, somebody who wasn't in the neighborhood but did drink the water.
Oh, wow.
And that helped to convince the committee. So part of what this book is about is the questions that we ask in inquiry. What happened? Why did it happen? How can we prove it? So it's a little bit of that sort of scientific method as well.
Yeah, so that's part of the true story, isn't it?
It is, and I have 16 pages that actually tell you the whole timeline of the true story and some of the pictures of the actual historical characters. So you can go back, and I think for anyone 12 and over, they could also read the adult book, The Ghost Map, which is, I think, now out in paperback as well.
Did the water have a bad smell to it?
No, it did not. But what people thought really was causing cholera was the bad smell, which was called the miasma, or some people call it miasma. and it was the bad air because of the pollution of the river. And so people were convinced that in close quarters, this was a neighborhood that was quite poor. People were, lived together in very tight quarters, that it was the bad air causing it. And so Dr. John Snow really had a hard time making his case.
So Eel is the kid we all are cheering for. He's the one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Eel is working with Dr. Snow, and is he involved in the convincing of people, or just simply the mapping out of the?
He's actually involved in the convincing of people too. There's quite a scene at the end where he comes back into the committee and provides some of the proof. And one of the interesting things about Dr. Snow is that he was also a pioneering anesthesiologist, and so he used animals to test chloroform. And so in the story, Eel is hired to take care of Dr. John Snow's menagerie. And in real life, Dr. Snow actually attended Queen Victoria on the birth of her son and gave her chloroform. So he's really was, I think, named one of the major physicians in British history, and UCLA School of Public Health has a whole page devoted to him because he's still revered today. And this is the bicentennial of his birth, as you mentioned. Someone we don't really know here in the United States, but really had a big impact on the future of public health. So anyone who's taking public health will know his name.
Wow. Deborah Hopkinson, again, is our guest. The book is called The Great Trouble. Was that the nickname for cholera, The Great Trouble?
No, it was more called The Blue Death. That was just the title we gave to it for what happened in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And then Eel has a friend named Flory. Yeah, quite a character.
Yes, I really like Flory, although I'll admit to you that Flory did not survive in my first draft, but my editor brought her back.
No. We have a listener calling in. Let's take that call. Good morning. You're on the air with Deborah Hopkinson.
Thanks, Larry and Robin. And Deborah, thanks for calling in from the West Coast. I'm listening to the interview, and I'm wondering if you could explain to the listeners your take on the importance of clean water in any country, starting with the United States, and the significance of what one political persuasion in our country has demonized as regulations, how important regulations are to keep water a public issue and a public asset, and the agenda of corporatization. And what would be the author's take on that, Deborah? I guess I would know the answer just by listening to the in-depth knowledge that you have and your desire to study and able to even take the subject and make it a fiction book. So that shows you. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I bet I know the answer. And I happen to have grown up the son of a water purification plant operator, and I've seen how important and how water is treated and how important it is, and now the agenda of Coca-Cola to sneak in and corporatize America's water and then sell it back to us. But I would just hang up, Deborah, and thank you for your hard work.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Well, I'm not an expert, but I do think that a book like this, and for my own self as somebody, is I had a teacher say to me that they're pairing this book with a book about access to water in Africa, and the point of, I think, history for books like this for kids is that those are the kinds of issues about water policy, issues about clean air. When they grow up and become citizens and vote, the more that they understand about the policies behind it. And so I think that we take clean water for granted here. But again, as I learned, and as we've all learned as we've read about what's happened in Haiti, and now there looks like there's some of those cholera being spread to Mexico, the current estimates are that epidemic in Haiti will last a decade. And that feels close to home. Sometimes it's harder to think about clean water when it's Africa, when it's very far away, but this is very close to us.
Right.
So it's very possible, that in places in Mexico and even, we're very lucky that we have this public health system, but it's something that I think children and adults, it's a way to talk to your kids exactly about what the caller was saying about how does it affect our lives? What kind of public health system do we have that makes it possible for us to have clean water?
Was there any political issues regarding the circumstance that Dr. Snow was looking into? Was there anybody who said, no, we can't clean it up, it's going to cost too much money, or anything like that?
Well, it was a long process. So there was a man named Benjamin Farr who was the head of the statistics, and he's the one that would give Dr. Snow all the names of the people who died so they could go and do those interviews. And he did not believe in Snow's theory, and neither did a man named Henry Whitehead, who was the vicar in the local parish. They really thought he was crazy, and it wasn't until months later, and I've shortened this time period in the book, but they did a committee to investigate what happened, and it was over time, and Dr. John Snow's report that came out in January, that both of these men finally came around to his theory. So it took a long time for this, for the theory that cholera was caused by water to really take hold.
Did when the cholera did the outbreak, did it affect the fish population in the water, or were they or was the fish immune to that?
Well, they were, at this point, this particular epidemic was caused only by the pump water from the well that people were getting from their streets. So it was really localized to a neighborhood, but 600 people died within 2 weeks. So 2 or 3 weeks, I think. So,
wow.
It really was, and it was very frightening for people. People fled. I have a scene, actually, where Eel goes and helps one of the people who come in and take the bodies away. And there was a hospital nearby where actually Florence Nightingale, who's the name people know, was actually working as well. Later on, there's some fascinating things about, the sewer system and how eventually that sewer system was able to prevent these kinds of epidemics.
Boy, this is a great book.
Very, very multifaceted for sure. More than just fiction. This is really an educational opportunity for everybody, not just young readers. Deborah, you are no question why you are such a prolific and successful writer. This book is here. I have a copy of The Great Trouble. So if you want the one I have, call me and tell me so, and I'll leave it for you. But only one person will be able to do that. The rest of us have to go buy it. Deborah, how do we do that?
Well, you can go to your local independent bookstore or online, and if you want more information about my books, my website is deborahhopkinson.com, and I'm also on Twitter. And my books are actually in a timeline on my website, so if you're interested in the Titanic, or if you're interested in Dickens or Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller, you can sort of see where they fall in the history of, and maybe you can find a gift for someone this holiday season.
Wow, well, let me give this one away. Good morning, you've got the book. Who's this?
This is Cheryl, and her website's fabulous.
Oh, you've already gone there. Okay, Cheryl. Well,
yes.
the book is waiting for you right here.
Thank you.
And you know we're at the mall now, right?
I do. Thank
you. All right, thank you. Deborah, she's already looking at your website. How about that?
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A great conversation. Thank you for being on the air with us, and stay warm up in the cold Oregon. I'm trying to rub it in a little bit. It's
no,
like
that's okay.
it's like 85, I think, here right now.
All right.
Thank you, Deborah. Great interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to both of you. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll take a break and be right back.
Now is the time to take advantage of Florida Credit Union's CD specials. Our 36-month CD comes in at 1.26% APY. A 24-month is working for you at 1.0% APY. And our 12-month at 0.75% APY. All CD rate specials require $10,000 minimum. With friendly service and rates like these, it's not hard to see why Florida Credit Union has your CD options covered. Florida Credit Union, connecting your money to your life. Call 352-237-8222 for more information.
Cookies, 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 cookies.
When you want something special and fun for any occasion, get cookies. That's right. The Great American Cookie Company in the Paddock Mall, Ocala will make a delicious, fun-filled delight just for you. You might notice that I said fun and delicious more than once. That's because I can't say it enough. The next time you're at the mall, be sure and stop by or call 352-237-2557 to place your order.
Cookies, cookies,
Yum.
cookies, cookies. We go cookie eating cookies.
The Great American Cookie Company.
Phoenix Promotional Solutions, your company supplier of banners, digital decals, yard signs, and magnetic signs, where you give them